Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort, so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to be loved the way you are. I'm going to share 3 cheat phrases from the language of vulnerability, which will help you be more authentic and therefore more attractive. Next, drowning under the weight of her responsibilities and wondering why her distant husband wouldn't help more, my guest Catherine knew her marriage was going off course, but couldn't put her finger on what the problem was. Today, she feels supported and loves that she and her husband are choosing their lives together. Then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which I once thought was an immutable law. And while it sounds like it's about fairness, it actually made me an unwitting victim. All that is coming up. But first, let's talk about how to feel loved just for being you, just the way you are. I used to think that being vulnerable was a sign of weakness. I didn't think it was particularly desirable to be weak, so the whole vulnerability thing seemed like something to avoid. I knew I was strong and I could speak up when something wasn't right, which I didn't hesitate to do. I wasn't afraid to fight City Hall, and I always seemed to be doing that. But I was afraid. I was afraid that that soft, undefended part of me might show. I was afraid that that part of me was repulsive. I didn't like feeling so exposed, and I still don't, if I'm honest. But I love the part right after I run through the waterfall of fear and find out what's on the other side. It's indescribable. It's exhilarating. Anything could happen because I'm not controlling my image, and I've never known anything more gratifying than feeling loved for being my most authentic self, even if I'm a mess. Now that I know how it feels to be completely exposed and feel loved anyway, I wouldn't want to live any other way. Now I actually go out of my way to be vulnerable. After spending the first 20-something years of my life as a steamroller who rolled right over whatever threatened me, this is how I finally got there. I used the language of vulnerability. I use it because it reminds me who I want to be. It connects me to my heart. Here are the phrases I rely on to help me get vulnerable, which is essential for intimacy. Number 1 is, I miss you. Now, I've stood arms akimbo and insisted that my husband needed to spend more time with me. I told him that he needed to work on our relationship. I've told him that I was sick of him always being gone and that I really thought he watched too much TV. And none of that got me the attention I was seeking from my husband, or from anybody else for that matter. But then you already knew that. But these 3 magical words did. I miss you. It's vulnerability wrapped in a compliment. It's speaking for myself without making demands, without complaint, without criticism. And it gets the desired results. My husband once flew home from across the country a day early at great expense because I uttered those 3 words. I was so happy to see him, and he was just as eager to see me. Number 2, the second vulnerable cheat phrase is, I can't. I can't. I like having that can-do feeling. And growing up, my siblings and I chanted what we were told, which is, I can do anything. Yes, I can do anything, but it can get exhausting and even lonely sometimes. I can do anything, but I can't do everything. When I'm doing just about anything, I find I generally need help. Very often, I also need a nap. Once I crash into my limits without first applying the brakes, there's hell to pay. If my energy account is overdrawn, I have nothing left to give, and I get cranky and unpleasant. So if I overdo it, it's goodbye, good-natured Laura, and hello, Godzilla. If, on the other hand, I look down the road and I see that I'm getting low on reserves, I can make a different choice. Instead of flying headlong into a resentment or loitering at the Center for Self-Righteousness, I can use these 2 empowering words. I can't. That's it. No explanation necessary. I don't need to go into the details about how, if I carpool, I'm going to get home too late and be sleepy the next day. I can't is my shorthand for I can't do that and still get all the self-care I need to keep myself happy. But I don't usually share all of that. I just keep it simple. I can't. I know it seems like I'm just wussing out. You might be thinking, why not say, I don't want to? I don't want to just doesn't cut muster when I'm defending my squishy little needs. I thought it was more valiant to push through and ignore them, but it made me impatient and mean. I can't go there and still feel good about myself. It could cost me a lot of dignity. As a mere mortal woman, I have limits. And while it feels vulnerable to honor them, it also feels self-honoring. It's been thrilling to realize that I'm still lovable, even more than Superwoman is. It was never my accomplishments that made me so adorable. It's just me, just the way I am. There's nothing more gratifying than experiencing that. Here's the third cheat phrase. It's ouch. My husband hurts my feelings sometimes. Not very often anymore, I admit, but as human beings living in close proximity, that's going to happen occasionally. And when he does, my knee-jerk reaction is to strike back, to retort, to show him why he's wrong and offer 100 airtight defenses along with a subtle but sharp insult. But these days, I'm much more likely to utter just one word. Ouch. It's frightening to say because it means I'm admitting he's landed on a tender spot, but I prefer that now to putting up my dukes. I'm not the big fighter I used to be. I ended up lonely and emotionally hungover afterward. With a vulnerable approach, I'm choosing the intimacy over my impulse to hit back. I'm opening myself up to further hurt, yes, but ouch lets me preserve the emotional safety and it keeps me from lobbing hurtful words back at him and gives him the opportunity, which he often takes, to respond softly and tenderly. He doesn't really want to hurt me. He wants to love me, even if I'm oversensitive or hormonal. Nothing could demonstrate that to me more than seeing how sweetly he responds when I don't defend, but just let myself be utterly vulnerable. That's when I feel most lavishly, intensely, and thoroughly loved. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. Drowning under the weight of her responsibilities and wondering why her distant husband couldn't help more, my guest Catherine knew her marriage was going off course, but couldn't put her finger on what the problem was. But today she feels supported and loves that she and her husband are choosing their lives together. Welcome to the Empowered Wife program, Catherine. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Laura. I'm happy to be here.
So take us back to when the trouble started. What was happening in your marriage?
Yeah. The bad old days.
The bad old days, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the Disney movie that I was kind of hoping my marriage was going to be. And I think I've got a pretty ordinary story, to be honest. But, I'm sure it happens the world over, which is why it's so important to talk about it. And I just think you're often on that journey of kind of, you're sent to school and you're told to, study hard and get a good job, and then you're going to meet, somebody to share that all with. And then you sort of reach that point in your life. I'm sure this is just like the cause of many midlife crises. And you realise that person who you'd put you'd set your heart on, who you thought, in this ridiculous Disney movie of yours, was going to be really, was going to love you and support you, and I was going to feel special and happy, all those things that you talk about. And actually, you just turn around and find you're feeling really stressed and disappointed. And I was very frustrated, and actually sometimes quite resentful as well, which is hard. And I think for me, like the worst thing I felt was at that point in time was just that feeling of being really unsupported. um, and very, very disconnected. And I don't mean like unsupported in terms of financially. I mean, we were both in a good place. We were both individually, financially independent. But I just mean that kind of, that feeling where you like someone's just got your back, and they should be excited when you walk in the room, and pleased when you come home, and what interested in the like good stuff that's happening in your life, but equally just there, like if the bad stuff too, like just to comfort you and want just somebody who's on your side. And that just wasn't happening in my relationship. So, and it wasn't it wasn't anything dramatic. Like we weren't at loggerheads or rowing or fighting, or there wasn't out and out kind of animosity going on, which you often do hear about when people are at the point of sort of crisis in their relationship. But I think we were just both completely drowning in our responsibilities, and I think that's just so common to happen. It's a slow build over time, isn't it? Partly just becoming an adult, I think. We were both working full-time jobs for a start. And we had 2 children. Those jobs had very long commutes. So I was traveling like an hour and 45 minutes each way just to get to the office. It's like over 3 hours travel a day. Our kids are like 10 years apart. So one from a previous marriage and then one that we've had together. And then not long after our second daughter was born, we moved home and we took on a massive renovation project. And I think that's really common too. You're growing a family, you grow your home. And then we also bought a holiday home, which sounds lovely. And in the beginning was this like, exciting escape to the seaside once a month. And we'd go and be by the sea. And, we had this really romantic dream of what that would be like, which it was for a while. But eventually it just became a business, that we were renting out to other people. It's another job on the to-do list. And that just became quite tiresome. And then we took on, so we got burgled not long after moving into our home. And the police came around and said, I tell you what you should do, get a dog, because that's really good security. So we didn't just get one dog, we got 2 rescue dogs. As much as I love them, it's another thing that just takes time and a lot of commitment. And I still owned a flat in London that I was renting out myself. I wasn't using an agency or anything like that. So I'm just like giving you a picture here of kind of everything going on in our lives. And I'm sure, lots of people probably have the same thing. But my job was starting to take me abroad a lot as well. So I was traveling to Gibraltar at least once a month, which did take me away for the best part of a week with flying out there and spending some days out there. And all of that is just on top of the normal trying to do what you have to do to run a household with gardening and washing and shopping and all the rest of it. So yeah, it just weren't enough hours in the day. And so, yeah, like I said, we weren't arguing, but we had basically become like these kind of passing ships in the night. And my husband had changed his work hours as well. He was getting up very early. So we weren't even getting to kind of say goodbye to each other in the morning. I just wake up and he was gone. And then he'd go to bed early and I'd go to bed later because I was still working and doing stuff. And yeah, I think we had just become so distanced. And yeah, I think it wasn't to my husband's taste at all. That kind of buckle down and just get on with it. He's like a really naturally creative, funny, impulsive, light-hearted person. It's why I love him, because that's what he used to bring to my relationship and my life. But he'd become like flat and quite mute, actually. He didn't really speak. It wasn't arguments, it was just getting on with his own thing. And we rarely spoke about anything of consequence together at that point. And I think he also became quite resentful and very critical of my job, because as I said, it was taking me away a lot. And he would just say to me, you're just in the wrong job. And it became quite, he'd say that I had different priorities to him in terms of whether I wanted to spend time with the children or whether I was prioritizing my job over the kids. And that really hurt.
Yes.
especially as I think I had a pretty good relationship with my daughters. Um,
It's
and I just
it's almost like saying you're not a good mom. You're not prioritizing your
think
most important
it
job.
just felt so ungrateful. Instead of, me, I was thinking, why aren't you turning around and saying, my God, look at you running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You're such a great mom trying to deal with all this stuff. Instead of that, I was getting this like disapproving stares or these sort of eye rolling tuts. And yeah, there were evenings where I just went hungry because we hadn't managed to cook dinner. um, yeah, it just had got to a point where there was no love or affection really, because there was no time for that. It was just very transactional, lots of exchanges, and I think like the exchanges of like who's doing what when, and if that goes on for too long, I think with that level of sort of distance from each other, you do actually stop being interested in what each other is doing, and that's why I wasn't getting the like, oh, so happy to see you. You're so disconnected, and that's really where we were. But yeah, there were a couple of triggers of what actually led me to seek
Yeah.
you out.
So it sounds incredibly lonely too, in a way, right? Even though it's kind of it was a low level loneliness, I suppose, is what I'm hearing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we were just co-parents. We were like parallel parenting, tag teams. You know, you walk that dog, I'll take the kids here. You go and do this, I'll do that, and nothing that's got anything to do with being married to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very practical, but yeah, not very sentimental. A lot of that's had gone missing. So what was the moment where you said, okay, something's got to give. I can't go on like this?
Well, there were two things that happened in quite quick succession. The first, this was January 19, so over a year ago now, and I'd gone away with my work on this like leadership training course. They'd taken a bunch of the senior leaders from the teams to go and spend a week in Mallorca in this amazing place out in the middle of nowhere, where we were going to be put through our paces and really challenged about our leadership skills, like totally out of our comfort zone, given tasks to do that you'd never done before, and like it got progressively harder throughout the week, where you actually have to kind of lead a team through the night and work out. You didn't really get much sleep. It was great fun, very bonding, and as much as it was difficult, it wasn't loads, and it's the sort of stuff halfway through the trip, everybody wants to call home, and tell their other half about this quite sort of momentous thing they've been going through. And we'd had famous people come and give us motivational speeches, and there was a lot to want to share with someone. And I called home, and my husband picked up the phone, and he literally just passed the phone straight over to my daughter, and just assuming that that's all I was calling home was to talk to her. And he didn't even ask me how I was, let alone tell me he missed me or want to hear any of my stories. That was really hurtful, especially as my roommate was having a right old natter with her husband about this, that, and the other that she'd been up to, and I didn't get any of that. That was kind of pain point, red flag, I suppose, number one. And I came home from that trip actually, and I did bring it up. I said, because even when I came home, he didn't ask me anything. We had more time, and we still didn't talk about this thing I'd just been through, or that I'd been away for a whole week, and that there was no hug or mention of that. Really, it was just back to the grindstone. And so I asked him. I said, "Why are you not interested in what I've been doing?" And he said to me, "I think we've just grown apart, and we're on different paths, and we've got different priorities and interests now." And that was a real moment. It was a real alarm bell, because that's not, I didn't, whether we were on different paths or not, which I didn't think we were, that was not what I wanted. And so that really made me stop and go, I've got to do something. And the second thing was, I had two really close friends who, close friends of our family. We used to holiday with them a lot and see them quite regularly, who quite shortly after that trip announced they were getting divorced. And I couldn't believe it, because I know you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but they just seemed great to me, and we'd obviously shared so many special times with them. I was just gobsmacked that they both had said, that they had just grown apart and valued different things now, and there they were getting a divorce. And I really just felt like someone had passed me a mirror to the future and gone, take a look at yourself. This is where you're going. And I just, that was the moment that I just stopped. I thought, I've got to do something about this now, because I don't want to end up there. And if it could happen to them, it could happen to me. And I was really having one of those moments. And I couldn't just give up my job. We built our lives around a double income family. And from everything I talked to him about, that seemed to be the only thing being suggested to me was give up your job. But no, I found some other things I could do thanks to you.
So it does sound terrifying, though, that your husband was saying we've grown apart, and this other couple that you were close to said we just grew apart. So the parallels are uncanny. So I can see where it would be really scary. So what did you do?
Well, he seemed so accepting of it. He was just like, matter of fact, this is what's happened to us. But I wasn't going to accept that. So I went on Google and I typed in, why will my husband not hug me? And up pops Laura Doyle, and I end up on your website reading your blog, and I start to follow the roadmap. So I start to get these emails each day, and literally I read them and I was like, oh my God, this is my life, and she's got all the answers. So I think somehow through those emails I got onto the book, and I read. I downloaded and listened to First Kill All the Marriage Counselors. I remember actually desperately trying to find this book, The Empowered Wife, and because I wanted it on the audio book, because I was busy and I was going to do it on my commutes whilst I was traveling, and it's got a different title, so this is why I couldn't find it. I was like, oh my God, I need this book. So I did. I read, I listened to First Kill All the Marriage Counselors, and because my friends had gone through this, and I know other people who've been through counselling, and just all the rationale about the stuff, why that approach doesn't work and why this approach did, completely spoke to me. And the bit I loved about it, and probably why you changed it to The Empowered Wife, was that it did make me feel so empowered, because I sat there and I read it and I thought, all these things that I thought I needed my husband to change in order for us to be happy, actually half a ton of them are sitting in my lap that I can do something about. And if I just change some stuff about me, which didn't mean giving up my job, I could actually affect the whole relationship. And you were talking about connection and intimacy, which were exactly the things that I was seeking. So I started to practice a little bit of it, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but I saw some results. And I first of all, just in me, but then, I realised I got a coach in the end, because I realised that actually, whilst the theory really spoke to me, the practice of it in your real life is just brilliant, to have someone help you day-to-day things you're dealing with and go, well, how would I deal with it in this situation? And that was really, really transformative for me. Yeah.
What did you start to do differently than you had been doing things?
So I think one of the first things that really spoke to me was that difference between wife language and husband language. So to give you an example, like that holiday home, for example, which was, had become this burden where I was doing everything. I was doing all the bookings. I was booking the cleaners, dealing with the guests, sorting out all the issues, and this had just become my thing. And my way of dealing with that previously had been, well, do you know, Darren, this is going to take every single customer that we have is about 15 different interactions that I have to do. And I would kind of summarize this thing, expecting him to turn around and go, oh my God, I didn't realize that is terrible, darling. Let me step in and help you with this. That's what my wife language was really saying. His husband language was just hearing moan, moan, whinge, whinge. And I had to stop that, and I realized, we learned some stuff about relinquishing control and showing vulnerability. And do you know what? When I stepped up and said, I can't do this anymore, I need help, this holiday home is killing me. Oh, suddenly he's stepping in going, right, well, let's get this up. Let's get someone to run it for us. Why are you doing it all? And he was instantly finding solutions for me and supporting me in exactly the way I wanted him to. But he was never going to do that from me just moaning that, did you not realize that I have to answer half these emails at 11 o'clock at night and I have to do 15 different interactions for every customer? So there was a lot of that kind of just changing perspective on how I articulate things. The first things I started to do was really just relinquish control of a lot of stuff. So I had not realized how controlling I was. And it's purely generated by all that list of stuff I talked about that we were dealing with. And I'm a person who's on a track who just wants to get to the end of, get me to the light at the end of the tunnel. And when I pop out and I've done all these jobs, we're going to have a lot of fun. But you never get to the light at the end of the tunnel, do you? So I think I was always kind of making to-do lists and writing things that, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And I suddenly just started stopping and saying, I can't, like the holiday home, I just said, I can't do this anymore. And I looked at everything I was dealing with and decided which things I should take on and which things I shouldn't. And you know what? Just stop worrying about some of the things. It doesn't matter if I haven't done the online shop this week. We'll find some food to eat. we'll do something. And so I think starting to stop doing some stuff at the same time as starting to prioritize things that mattered to me. So starting to look after things that I found fun and not waiting to get to the end of that light at the end of the tunnel to enjoy that fun was so important. I joined a ladies football team, which was really good fun. So at the age of 44, I was learning to play football with a bunch of other middle-aged women who'd never played football before. Absolutely awesome fun. We do it on a Sunday at 4 till 5, which was meant that your husbands were at home having to get dinner ready, which was great. And he never begrudged me stuff like that, because I'd come home buzzing with it, and he thought it was fun that I was out learning something new. And those are the sort of bigger things, but even just little things like, take a nap. Do that sometimes now. Oh God, I'm so tired. Don't wait until the end of the to-do list. Go and have a nap, and then you can just deal with everything. So I think, those two things at first, they weren't drastically changing kind of necessarily what he was doing, but they were changing how I showed up in the family so much, because I suddenly felt less stressed. I felt much more relaxed. I felt excited, and I had something fun to talk about for once rather than just to-do list. And I think I hadn't realized, just sort of under that weight of that responsibility and everything I was trying to do to be a good mum, I was actually bringing some pretty ugly stuff to the relationship, because if all you ever see is someone who's tired and stressed, or just is, the first thing they're going to say to you is, have you done this, rather than how was your day, then that's not particularly attractive. And then, well, I think and I was also being quite disrespectful in the kind. I was doing a lot of nagging, and I think nobody likes a nagger, and I didn't like being a nagger, but I didn't really know any other way. I didn't know, how do I get these things done without nagging, and so actually realizing that my husband does things in a different way from how I do, and I had to really work on relinquishing control of timelines, because I kind of actually took away a lot of the opportunity for him to do things, because I was always jumping in and doing it first, because I just want to get them done, and I don't want to get any fines because we haven't paid this bill, or I know what the deadline is for the school thing that I don't want my daughter to miss out on. And now that I've stopped doing some of that stuff, I've realised that he does step up and do it he just doesn't do it to the same timeline that I would. And so if someone does something in a longer time period, then you've got to give them the time to get to it, which I realised I never was, and that's why I was taking so much on. But I learned a lot of techniques where I think the biggest thing for me was that stop and question. When I'm about to do something, when I'm about to nag or control or criticize, which was often my way, I have a choice, and I can either do that in the hope of getting something done, but I'd done that for a long time and it never got anything done, and I would do that in the knowledge that it not only wouldn't get the thing done, but it would also hurt that intimacy in my relationship and that connection, the thing I wanted. Or I could choose that connection, and I found ways to do that. I got a great story about some dog trays, if you want to hear that one.
Yeah, sure do. Tell us.
My great big rescue dogs that are lovely but burdensome. One of them has a lot of allergies, and he had to start eating raw meat because we figured that maybe he was allergic to some of the stuff that was in this dried food. And so they'd come in these plastic trays, just this raw, bloody meat from the butcher. And, he had to have 3 of them a day. And every time that my husband fed him in the garage, he would just he'd empty the food into the bowl and he'd leave the tray on the side. And I thought that's pretty gross. It's like full of blood and it's left there in my garage, and he never washed it up. And I would look at it and I think, apart from the fact that it was so unhygienic and I worried about it in there, it also smelt revolting. So every time I went in to feed the dog, I was sort of gagging from the smell of this dried, yucky blood in my garage. But, this was one of the first experiments my coach gave me, just to see if I can deal with relinquishing control. And it was a brilliant one because it went on for months. And those dog trays stayed there. And I basically did some practical stuff, like I put a little air freshener in there so I could go in and, spray that every time I went in the room. But I also visualized this sort of bubble around me, like this little protective bubble. And every time I went in there, I would be trying to flex that bubble, saying to myself, I am choosing the intimacy. I am not mentioning these because I do not want to damage my relationship. And if I do mention these, this little bubble that's around me now is going to pop. And it was brilliant because I was able to go on like that until the point that he suddenly cleared them all up, like after about 3 months. I mean, they were towering up, all falling off the side, and it's the most revolting thing I've ever seen. But it was great because I could go in there and look at that and go, yeah, you're not being controlling.
It was like a monument to relinquishing control. It was your statue, your award for, yeah.
And the funny thing is, again, about what's in your mind versus what is reality is, it turns out after he cleared them all up, he had no idea that I wasn't doing the same thing. He thought half of those trays were from me, and I was always diligently washing mine up every day. And I thought he knew I washed them up and I recycled them, but he just had no clue because he's not fussed by stuff like that. That's just not a bother in his world. So yeah, that was a win.
That is a big one. I like this story too. You Googled, why doesn't my husband hug me? But there was a day that he spontaneously kissed you in public. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think this was a huge one because what I realised over time as I was working with relinquishing control was that actually so much of it was connected to the skill we talk about, respect, and trying to respect your husband. And I realised that in criticising him a lot and trying to control him, I wasn't actually respecting who he was and the way he wants to live his life and the way he wants to do things. And he'd said that to me before. He'd often quote that phrase to me, it's your way, it's not the only way, or there's 2 ways to go about it. And I was always like, well, yeah, my way's the best way. So we were out for some drinks one night for somebody's birthday in town, and I thought, I'm going to try an apology on this, and I'd been practicing it in my head, and I went up to him and I said, I really just want to apologize for all the times in the past where I've tried to tell you what to do and where I've assumed that my way of doing things is the only way of doing things. And I said, that just must have been so irritating, and I'm sorry. And he just leaned in and gave me a kiss. And I mean, he never kisses me in public at all. In fact, yeah, I almost literally fell over. I couldn't believe it. So it was a really special moment, but it also meant to me that then I realised just how annoying that must have been, and I was absolutely determined that I wasn't going to behave like that anymore.
Yeah, so it inspired you to keep going along those lines, it sounds like.
Absolutely, yeah. And so when you have those questions of, right, am I choosing this or am I choosing intimacy, I would kind of think about that, and it helped me kind of make the right thing, because then, you know, all anyone wants is to live with someone who's happy and fun to be around. You know, nobody wants to live with a taskmaster. And I didn't mean to be that person. And now, you know, I'm prioritizing, you know, messing around with my daughter in the kitchen. We do a lot of dancing in my household, a lot of singing. And that's so much nicer, isn't it? I mean, I wiped off all the to-do lists. We used to have a blackboard with to-do lists. I just wiped it clean and drew a picture on it instead.
Oh, love that. And you even relinquished the finances. He handles. Oh,
yeah.
Tell us about that.
So, I mean, we've been married over 10 years, and we'd still had, because we were both working, and we had never gone through that, like, oh, are you going to give up work, and how are we going to pay for all this stuff? It just was never necessary. And when I first came to this program, I'd heard about that being one of the, the great ways of restoring intimacy was to, pool your finances and to, let your husband deal with all that stuff. And I thought, firstly, it's so unnecessary for me. I just don't need it, because, he's got his money, I've got my money, we're fine. It's not anything we ever argued about. It wasn't a bone of contention. Like, we if we needed something, we bought something. We weren't sort of saying who's paying for what. So it just seemed unnecessary. But secondly, I think I didn't want to, because I had taken on a lot of dealing with the finances, and I don't think I trusted, because I didn't respect my husband properly, that if I did do that, he would pick up all the stuff that I look after. So there were kind of two quite strong reasons for me that I thought, no, this skill's not for me. But I thought, once I was seeing progress in all the other areas, I was like, do you know what? Maybe I'll just have a go at it, because you'd said, if it doesn't work for you, just give it up. Oh my God, it was one of the best ones, like, from an intimacy point of view, which is not what I thought. I thought I'd be doing it to try and get him to do more of the jobs on the finances. But actually, which incidentally it has led to, but the first thing that it actually led to, was it was just a restoration of that being in this together. And when I suggested it to him, I was like, why do we have all these different bank accounts? Why don't we just stick it all in one? And, my money is your money is my money. I mean, if we're in this marriage, I want to be in it properly, 100%. And he was like, really? He was so shocked that I was even suggesting that we did this, and delighted. And he then ran off actually and told my stepdaughter, he's like, guess what Katie and I are doing? And he was so pleased about it that he went and told someone else. And I just thought, wow, even just saying that was such a sign of, I want to be with you and I love you, and why are we leading these separate lives? That was a great first step. But as you said, subsequently, and that was probably the more important bit to me, was that connection. But subsequently we definitely, through this pandemic, he's been awesome at dealing with all the financial stuff that we've had to deal with. Obviously, we own various properties, so there was a lot of phoning the mortgage companies and trying to get extensions on those payment holidays and all the rest of it. And I've done none of it. all the stuff that I always think I would have to action, he's just got on with it. And he's not seeking credit or, attention about it. He's just dealing with it. And I had more work to do than he did at the beginning of the pandemic. And so he just, stepped in, and that shocked me too. He really is capable, really capable. I'm really good at this stuff. Who knew?
Right.
I thought he was just the airy fairy creative type, but he's quite good at admin too.
Oh, love that. And I think I know for me, that was a big part of why I wanted the intimacy skills, was to get my husband to do stuff. Yeah. But I love what you're bringing up, which is what you really got was that beautiful connection and intimacy, and him seeing that you really were all in. You wanted to be all in. Yeah. And the delight and joy on his face from you guys being in it together. So I love that. Yeah. Must have been a little bit scary to do that. Was it?
I don't know. I think because I went into it totally expecting the experiment to fail and that we would just be going back to our old ways, that I didn't think too much about it. It was just such a pleasant surprise when it went so well. I was like, oh, yeah, we'll take more of this, please. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And what's your relationship like now?
Well, pretty different. I'm much more connected. So I'll give you some examples. I mean, from kind of little things. So like I said before, with the self-care making me happier has definitely been noticed. And the fact that I'm just more fun to be around is making our home just a much happier place to be, because my husband even admitted, I asked him the other day, because I've never really talked to him much about this stuff. This is just things I've been doing in the background, because I figured I didn't want it to be too noticed, I wanted it to be natural. And but I did recently, I said, but how do you think our relationship has changed? And he was like, you are so much less critical. And the fact that he came out with that, I was like, wow, I've been working so hard on that. And so, I think just the fact that I had made myself more happy and more relaxed and knew what I was prioritizing in our relationship has had a lot of difference, because it allows everyone else to behave in a more relaxed way. If they're not worried that the first thing you're going to ask them is how many things they've ticked off today, off their to-do list, they're going to share more of the frivolous, stupid, fun stuff with you, which is what you actually want to know. I want to be messing around with my husband, out on a dog walk on the common, and he's done that a bit now as well. Like, we went in for a selfie photograph and he was hugging me and trying to push me away, but just playing with me like the way he normally does with the kids, and I absolutely loved that. And I've got that on camera, so I like to look at that photo and go, see, there he is being intimate. But I think and I mean, I've talked a bit about how I don't get in the way of him doing stuff anymore. So he's actually doing more stuff because I'm not getting in his way, which is fantastic, which equally makes my life a lot easier. And I feel supported in that way, like we are taking equal responsibility for everything in our lives. And he's always been a fantastic father, but I feel like he's doing lots of other stuff now that he wasn't before. But the most exciting one, Laura, for me is this change around my job. I have gone from a place where he was criticizing my job choice and telling me I should leave, and questioning where my priorities lie, to him actually coming to work for the same company and choosing that the whole family should move abroad to Gibraltar, so that I can do that same job, but we can prioritize the fun and the connection by being close to the office and not having huge commutes and living in the sunshine and having a completely different outlook on our family life. So he is not only not criticizing my job, he's actively supporting me in those choices, and we're building those life choices, big life choices together, and we're going to go on new adventures. I don't know if that one's going to happen now because the pandemic has messed it all up and we can't go to Gibraltar right now, otherwise we probably would have been moving there about now. But if it does or it doesn't, I know we will build other exciting adventures together because we are in that place where we're making decisions together. We're talking and we're prioritizing each other over that sort of quality of life is our priority now over just trying to juggle a million things and trying to get to that end point that never arrives. So yeah, I'm so grateful.
So this is more like the Disney movie you envisioned.
Yes. Oh my God, I am a princess.
I love it. I think we all secretly want to be Disney princess.
Yeah. He swooped in and he's rescued me.
Yeah. And so, what's your tip for a woman who says, "Well, I want the kind of relationship that Catherine has, where they're not on separate tracks; they're making these decisions together." And she's her prince has come to rescue her. What should she do?
I would absolutely just say, take a step back and stop trying to run to the end of that tunnel. That light will never come. So look at your day to day and really ask yourself, what do you want? Because you've got to start now. You can't kind of wait until this point in the future where everything's going to come together. And so, I would say, look at the here and now. Ask yourself what you want, and if you're not doing that, then get some help, because if I can do it, anyone can do it. But I definitely needed that little divine intervention of, here's some skills that's going to help you get there. And it all seems so obvious when you're shown it, but it's not obvious when you're kind of in that rut, kind of running like a hamster on a mill. So I would highly recommend starting with the book, but just getting some one-on-one help, because you're able to work with such specific instances in your own life and really understand kind of where like a really good friend will tell you when you're messing up, and because they know you'll still love them. That's a little bit what I felt like your book was. It was like a really good friend going, come on, Catherine, really? And then going, you're still a good person, it's fine. I found that so helpful.
And what would you say to yourself now, too, if you could go back and talk to Catherine before? What do you know now that you want to say to her?
Probably just that you're not Superwoman, for God's sakes. And I think I always thought the only option was just to take more on and to try harder and to work harder. And, I don't feel like I complained about it too much, but it was obviously, it was seeping out all over the place. I think just say to myself, you can't do it all, but there is another way. The answer isn't just give it all up. There is actually a lot you can do to get help and to actually do this together. You don't have to just stop everything, but just changing a few things in the everyday about how you show up to those challenges or in that relationship can massively change all the other people in that relationship too. Not just your husband, like your family too.
Beautiful, inspiring. So, and why are you sharing all this with us? It's very personal. Why would you do that?
I know, but I've got kids, and I look at my kids and I just see them so happy. They're enjoying a really great life with their parents together on the same track, who are supporting them and who are happy, and who are like, we completely prioritize sort of family fun. I just sort of think about the what if, and it could have gone so differently. And I think I'm absolutely convinced that there's so many divorces out there that are unnecessary. And, I'm sure there's some that are perfectly valid. And, I've got friends obviously going through it. But I don't, if I had ended up in that place, I know that it wouldn't have been valid and totally unnecessary. And then you think about those kids who then all the other people who are then dealing with the mess of the separated families afterwards, and it just all it needed was a little bit of re-gearing and pointing in a slightly different direction, and look how different we are. So I kind of think, if I know that's true for me, I know, because that's not an unusual story, I'm sure, and I know there'll be other people who are probably at that point of wondering how to cope. And I just think, if they can see that there is another way, it's like my little bit of giving back to the universe. The universe stepped in and gave me your book. So if I can, help show other people that can be true for them and their kids as well, and that's absolutely worth me talking on this podcast. Yeah.
Wow! Congratulations on giving your kids that home court advantage. It sounds wonderful. It sounds joyful and so worthwhile. What a great testimony to your hard work, especially, having your husband acknowledge it, that you're a lot less critical now, I think is a great thing, but also just seeing your children enjoy that connection that the two of you share must be really gratifying.
Yeah. And, there's always more work to be done, Laura. There's more out there, I know. There's definitely more hugs, definitely more of those kisses to come. So I'm not stopping. I'm not at the end of the journey.
No, you're not. In fact, you've trained to become a coach, and now you'll be embarking on that adventure, which is, I always think of it as the next level of the video game when you're giving back at that
level.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Really so valuable, so inspiring to hear about your journey. Catherine, thank you so much for sharing it with us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that's got me apoplectic this week is that both people have to work on the marriage. And if your partner won't work on the relationship, you should leave. I remember thinking that too. That's why couples counseling was so appealing to me. Then the counselor could fix him while I stood by being so supportive. Of course, that didn't work. And it was mighty surprising and rather painful to discover that not only was I wrong about both people having to work on the relationship to fix it, I discovered I was never going to have a shiny, amazing relationship like I have now unless I worked on myself. And that once I practiced the intimacy skills, he seemed like a much better husband, completely different husband, the one that originally wooed me. So then the attachment I had to him working on the relationship seemed so much less important because I was getting what I had always wanted in terms of feeling desired and special and taken care of. It wasn't until I stopped worrying about what he was doing and focused very much on my own side of the street that the magic happened. For that reason, the advice that you both have to work on the relationship is the worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share 3 steps to stop silent treatment. I hope you're having lots of fun. Fun is so important. Today's fun fact is that one of the many things I love about my Tesla Model S is that it's so easy to spell. It's just S.